Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I've got another Master Duel video for you all. So, today we're going to be talking about yet another Spright Synchro based deck that I have been cooking up, and that is going to be Bystial Spright Synchro. Now, to be fair, this one's a little less cooking and a lot more me just taking inspiration from the OCG, where this deck has made a little bit of an impact. It's been featured on a couple of meta reports on Road to the King, but not as a very high up or prominent deck. That said, it's still a very good deck, and I think it's an extremely fun one. And a lot of the concepts that were here were the inspiration for the Punk Spright deck that I, of course, have been playing a lot and took to MCS Week 14 and got top 16. So this is actually the build that I'm planning on using for the MCS Invitational as well. At the time that I'm recording this, it is the day before the tournament, and I think the time that this is going out is going to be the day afterwards. So if I end up doing well, I will absolutely post a follow-up tournament report that will go more in depth into the combo lines and how they're all done. I guess if demand is high enough, I could just do that in general. But because I would be down to it. I love talking about this deck. Spright Synchro is, to me, I think just one of the coolest decks out there right now. But yeah, this is definitely a before the MCS Invitational kind of a video, and, hopefully, if we do well enough, I will be more than glad to do a follow-up tournament report, and again, more in-depth combo guide as well. So, this video, though, is just going to be talking about this deck here, kind of briefly, and showing you what it's generally all about. This is pretty similar in a lot of ways to the Punk Spright deck that I built, so if you've seen those videos, then you can definitely use those as kind of reference for just generally the kind of philosophy of the playstyle here, which is utilizing the Spright monsters in order to turbo out synchro plays instead of Xyz and Lynx as they do in archetype. So we are playing the Spright package of 2 blue, 2 jet, 1 red, 1 carrot, and then 2 starter. Pretty similar to what we were doing with the Spright Punk deck, except now blue is at 2, so I decided to throw in a second jet in place of the third blue, just to keep my Spright numbers up a bit. I would actually like to be playing more Spright monsters in this deck in general, so if I had the room, I would be playing a third jet. If I had room is going to be a phrase you're going to hear me probably say a lot when talking about this deck, because there's a lot of things you can play in this deck. There's a lot you can play, and this is one of those decks where, I do this for every deck, to be fair, but when building a deck, I don't just get up to 40 cards and then stop. I'll actually keep building it until it's 45 or sometimes even up to 50 cards, and then I'll trim it down to 40, weeding out some of the cards that I think are too situational, not good enough, so on and so forth. And it was really difficult to do that with this deck, and there's been a lot of adjustments, and I can even see a world where I end up swapping out 1 card in this deck before I actually end up submitting it for the tournament there. But yeah, this deck is super rad. So we're mainly looking to kind of Bystial, or not Bystial, kind of like Punk Spright. We're really looking to get a level 2 tuner and 2 level 2 non-tuners on the board. If we can manage that, you have plays. There's a couple of different ways you can do that. Assault Synchron plus Spright Blue was the line that we used in Punk Spright. This deck, however, also features the option to go into Deep Sea Diva with literally any of the Spright monsters. We're using Deep Sea Diva in order to grab Deep Sea Sentry. This card is pretty much only used as a level 2 non-tuner Sea Serpent exactly. When I was searching for in Master Duel, there's 3 level 2 non-tuner Sea Serpents in the whole game. And this one has the most relevant body, it's got the highest defense points, and literally maybe once every 1,000 games you might actually get to mill your top 2 and then add a Diva from graveyard to hand. I actually have done that 1 game. It didn't really end up mattering, but I was still able to do it. But this is literally only meant to be grabbed off of Diva. It serves no other function in the deck. It is still a level 2 monster though, so even if you open it, you can still just normal summon it and special Spright and you're good. That's kind of one of the big philosophies behind this deck, is that when we brick, unlike other combo decks where they brick, they don't really have plays at all. When this deck bricks, you still just go into a pure Spright line. That's kind of one of the reasons this deck is so insane, right? Even if we don't get up for a huge Wombo combo, we can still just, run out of Spright Starter, and then you'll end on like Elf plus IP plus Red, and that's if you brick. That's a very good spot to be in, considering that you're bricked. So, yeah, I that's one thing I very much like about this deck. A couple of other tech cards. We are playing a Bystial package here, as you can see. The Bystial ratios are honestly probably the thing I'm least sure on about this deck. I was initially playing 3 Bystial Lubellion. Now, in my Let's Talk About Bystials video, you might be thinking, well, Hex, you said Bystial Lubellion is pretty much only good in Branded. And I did kind of allude to that, but I also did make a comment of, like, there are other decks that might want the level 8 body. This is actually one of them. So Bystial Lubellion looks a little bit weird here, and it might be weird to think, why would you want any number of these, let alone 3? But, fun fact, Chaos Ruler. This is a level 6 or higher Dark Dragon monster. Bystial Lubellion tributes a level 6 or higher Dark Dragon monster to summon it. And Assault Synchron can bring a Dragon Synchro monster back that has been tributed or banished. So, basically what that means is if you have a Chaos Ruler on the board, and it doesn't even matter if you summoned it back by its own effect or not already, regardless if it goes to the graveyard or gets banished, tributing a Chaos Ruler for the Bystial Lubellion will trigger Assault Synchron to bring the Chaos Ruler back. So that's why I like Bystial Lubellion. It's also why I'm playing a couple copies of Saronir, is to be able to send the Bystial Lubellion to the graveyard a little bit more often. We're of course playing one of each Magnamhut, Druiswarm, and then I've got one copy of Baldrake as well to act as a little more disruption, as on top of being an extender too. And yeah, let's see. A lot of the stuff like Maxx, Ash Blossom, Imperm, Prosperity, Tuning, Call By, that's all pretty self-explanatory. Oh, there's a few more one-ofs I need to talk about here. Caligo, Clawcrow, and Nemeses Corridor, where you're playing as 2 potential targets for Cupid Pitch. The reason we have both in here, in the last deck, we actually had No Punk Xeamine was our main Cupid Pitch target, and we could just search it and normal summon it because the line that we used to make Cupid Pitch didn't take a normal summon. Now we're playing Diva, and sometimes our line to make Cupid Pitch does take a normal summon, so we're back on Caligo Clawcrow. This is actually exceptionally strong in this particular build with the Chaos Ruler. You can special the Crow alongside the Chaos Ruler, use those to go into Sprind, and now you can use Sprind to dump one of our other one-ofs, which is Shinobi Necro. A Shinobi Necro is a level 2 tuner that can special summon itself when it's banished from the graveyard. So the idea is, we make Chaos Ruler using Cupid Pitch. Cupid Pitch's effect, grab Caligo Clawcrow. Crow summons itself alongside Chaos Ruler. Chaos Ruler and Crow, like I said, link into Sprind. Sprind F sends the Shinobi Necro to the graveyard, and then we can actually banish the Cupid Pitch and the Shinobi Necro from the graveyard to bring back the Chaos Ruler. That will summon the Shinobi Necro to our field, and then we can go into a 10. So, pretty nice combo line you can do there. We'll also be showing that off in action in some of these games as well, if you can follow it by that kind of haphazard explanation. Oh yeah, so then we are playing Nemeses Corridor. This I've been a little on the fence about. In Sprite Punk, I was initially playing Nemeses Corridor, but then took it out because it felt a little win more. It's a little win more here too, but I will say that if you open Assault Synchron, you actually typically don't end up needing Caligo Clawcrow, and in that case, that's typically when I'll search out Nemeses Corridor. And Thunder Dragon Colossus is a very, very good card right now. It's decent against Serial, it stops a couple of things, but it's good against Branded. It stops them from searching with like Alibur. I don't know why I couldn't think of the card's name for a second there, but it stops them from searching with stuff like Alibur or Springin's Kit, or Dragon Keeper of Magic if they're playing that, or Despian Tragedy. But furthermore, it also is a pretty big hindrance to Spright. Obviously, stopping Blue and Jet is very big. And Dragon Link as well is like the big one. To be fair, that is like probably the least popular of the decks that I mentioned. But Thunder Dragon Colossus just pretty much wholesale shuts down any variation of Dragon Link. So having access to that, I do think is exceptionally powerful. And I don't know, it's just so, it's close. It's really close as to whether or not Nemeses Corridor and Colossus make the cut, but I do think in this particular deck they actually do. As far as the extra deck goes, I actually want to make a change to this extra deck that I'll do now while I'm thinking about it. I'm going to take out this Herald of the Arclight, even though I was playing it in the games we're going to see. And I want to put in Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy. I wanted to try this out because there are some times where you have a Bystial and just another random monster and you want to link them off. So having the option to do that for pretty much free with Dark is, you know, obviously a good thing to have. Also, the ability to steal your opponent's Dark monsters is very, very good. But Herald of the Arclight just never came up. There's no combo line where you can natively summon it. If you're ever going to sync for 4, you're pretty much always ever going to sync for Cupid Pitch. It's not really right to sync for Herald of Arclight on turn 1 in, again, pretty much any given hand. So, for that reason, I've ultimately decided to drop it. So, wow, I've talked a lot about this deck because it's one I'm very excited about. So let's go ahead and break it down card by card, and then we'll look at some gameplay. So we're on 3 Deep Sea Diva, 3 Maxx, 1 Caligo Claw Crow, 1 Shinobi Necro, 1 Deep Sea Sentry, 2 Spright Blue, 2 Spright Jet, 1 Spright Red, 1 Spright Carrot, 3 Assault Synchron, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Nemeses Corridor, 1 Bystial Magnamhut, 2 Bystial Saronir, 1 Bystial Druiswarm, 1 Bystial Baldrake, 2 Bystial Lubellion, 3 Tuning, 1 Pot of Prosperity, 2 Call by the Grave, 2 Spright Starter, and then 3 Infinite Impermanence. And there's our main deck. Now for the extra deck, we're on 1 Thunder Dragon Colossus, 1 Cupid Pitch, 1 Chaos Ruler, the Chaotic Magical Dragon, 1 Accel Synchro Stardust Dragon, 1 Baronne de Fluer, 1 Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign, Chengying, 1 Gigantic Spright, 1 number 38 Hope Harbinger Titanic Galaxy, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy, was Herald of the Arclight in these games, but again, wanted to make that change. 2 Spright Elf, 1 Spright Sprind, 1 Knightmare Unicorn, and then finally 1 Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avermax. There is our deck list. Now let's look at some gameplay. Our first game here is going to be against Branded Despia. These are all games that were taken from yesterday, the day that I'm recording this, when I was doing some playtesting with this stuff after it dropped here in Master Duel. So here we have a pretty decent opening hand. We have Diva plus a bunch of Bystials. So the main thing you're looking out for is, can I make a level 8 Synchro? That's the big question to ask yourself, is if I can make a level 8 Synchro, read Chaos Ruler, then you're going to be in typically a pretty good spot. So even though a Diva got ashed here, we can still use the Saronir to banish the Lubellion, and then sync these two off in order to go for our Chaos Ruler. Now you might have noticed that I summoned a Saronir and not the Magnamhut that I searched. That was very intentional. I want to use Saronir to send the Lubellion from the deck to the graveyard, the remaining one. Now I can potentially use that later during this turn to sack off the Chaos Ruler and then bring it back, hopefully if I get an Assault Synchron, which thankfully I did here. So we are definitely in the money here. Now, unfortunately for me, I did not actually use Cupid Pitch because I just found myself wondering, wait, why didn't I get another search? But no Cupid Pitch here, but because we have the Assault Synchron, that's totally fine. We can summon this other Magnamhut that we searched and sync those two off for Assault Synchro Stardust Dragon. If you have the ability to weave in the Assault Synchro Stardust, it's very much recommended. Just having any additional bodies on board here is generally just very recommended. Now, one of the most counterintuitive things you're going to have to do when playing this deck is what you just saw there. When you have a level 2 tuner and Chaos Ruler out, a Chaos Ruler that you've not brought back yet, let me clarify, you'll be very tempted to just sync for a level 10, but that's actually not what you want to do. You want to link them into Spright Sprind. This is what I was talking about during the deck profile. Now we're going to use Sprind to send the Shinobi Necro from our deck to the graveyard. Now we can use Shinobi Necro, and we'll use, in this case, Lubellion, because we don't have Cupid Pitch in our graveyard. We're going to banish both of those in order to bring back our Chaos Ruler. Now Shinobi Necro will trigger to special summon itself back, and now we can sync for a level 10, getting the Baronne de Fluer here. Going to use the Assault Synchron in order to bring back the Chaos Ruler. And I have 2 level 8 monsters on my board, so I can go ahead and overlay those into our Titanic Hope Harbinger. Now, this is exceptionally good with the Sprind because not only can I start negating spells and attaching them to the Hope Harbinger, but I have an Xyz monster that I can pretty freely detach materials from because I don't really need to detach materials for Hope Harbinger's spell negating effect. So, yeah, we're going to end up passing after this, but as you can see, even though we got disrupted and we weren't able to make Cupid Pitch because our Diva got negated, we were still able to end on Sprind, Hope Harbinger, and Baron. So this is an Omni Negate, a Spell Negate, and the ability to bounce back something our opponent summons. We also are still holding this Baldrake in our hand, and during our end phase, Magnamhut will even add us a Druiswarm. So we have a lot of points of interaction here. we also have a lot of options for extending into our next turn if we need to as well. So my opponent's going to start by normal summoning the Springen's Kit. This to me was a pretty clear Baron bait. They really wanted me to negate and destroy the Springen's Kit there, but I'm going to wait for the actual branded fusion to negate that is my idea here. So Branded Regain has been added. It will now be activated. This does not do anything relevant at all for the current board state, so I have no need to negate this with either Baron or Hope Harbinger. Again, this is, to me, is just very obvious, like a negation bait. Like, they just want me to go ahead and negate this stuff here. Branded Lost is going to be another story. Now, although Branded Lost itself I don't find to be a particularly threatening card, it does have the ability to potentially stop me from, well, stopping their branded fusion. So I'm going to use Hope Harbinger here, not using Baron, because Baron's negation is not only just once while it's on the field, but it's also a lot more general use. Like, I can negate anything, but if my opponent is specifically using a spell, I'm just going to go ahead and fire off the Hope Harbinger here. Now I will attach the Branded Lost to it as a material, and we're looking really good now. My opponent only has 2 cards in hand. Yeah, they ultimately end up conceding, because I figure one of those last 2 cards is going to be the Branded Fusion they've been trying to activate, and they've been trying to use all this other stuff to bait my negations in order to save that Branded Fusion. So we can negate and destroy that with the Baron. Then at that point, they only have 1 card left in hand. I still have the Spright Sprind to negate, or not negate, to bounce a special summoned monster. So we're looking pretty good, again, even though we didn't do our full main combo, and we did get stopped by an Ash Blossom there. Still looking very, very good, and still showing off just how all this new stuff weaves together in this Synchro pile. But we definitely have more games to show off, so let's go into the next one here. Okay, so for the next game, we're going to be up against Fluonderies, which is definitely not a deck this one wants to play against. You know, part of the casualties of being in a format where Graveyard Hate is really good is playing a deck like this. So opening hand, not looking very great here. We don't have any disruption, so opponent's going to start by firing off a Dimensional Fissure, then normal summon the Eaglin, add M-Pen, set a card, and then pass. So thankfully for me, they didn't have like a full opening board. But again, one of the nice things here is that even when we find ourselves getting disrupted, bricked, or in this case facing, well, I guess disruption in the form of Dimensional Fissure, could argue that's more of a floodgate, but we can still just always go into a Spright line. That's the cool thing about this deck, is even if you end up getting hindered or stopped in some way, shape, or form, you are still just always able to go into a Spright line. And that's, I mean, that's always going to be good enough to get like a foothold into the game, right? If not just outright, you know, winning it. But yeah, just taking these situations, because I did think very briefly about playing this deck with like Thunder Dragons instead of Sprites, because they really like getting banished by the Bystials. But it's the same thing of when I tried to play Thunder Dragon Punk versus Spright Punk. The main thing that I encountered that I didn't like about, or I guess I should say that I liked a lot more about Spright variants over Thunder Dragon variants, is the ability to play through a hand or a situation where things are not ideal or optimal, and still having the very, very strong option that does not require a lot of commitment. So looks like our opponent is still pretty bricked. They're not drawing any more cards or searching anything. They didn't play anything at all last turn. They just passed. So I'm just going to play some more Spright monsters and rock this Colossus as well. Oh, you know what? I actually misplayed. I committed... oh, no. Sorry, I didn't misplay. I thought I misplayed. I think I might be thinking of a different game. But I don't think I could have actually... No, maybe I could have. I'm trying to remember if I could have summoned Colossus before getting 2-locked on my first turn. I think I actually could have, if I'm recalling correctly. Of course, the replay's over now, before I remember that happened. I wanted to talk about that and point that out, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I could have made Colossus on turn 1, which, or my turn 1, turn 2 of the game, which obviously is very, very good against Fluonderies. So minor misplay on my part that fortunately did not really end up mattering here. So let's just go into this next duel here. For this one, we're playing against Exosister, which is an even more annoying deck for us to have to play against, as we are very much constantly moving stuff out of the graveyard. But fortunately, we do get to take the first turn here. And this is a pretty exceptional opening hand. We open Diva, Saronir, and Tuning, and we also open the Corridor, which I actually typically don't like to open, but it's not terrible to have if you have a way to banish a card, which again the Bystials do provide. So here I'm going to normal summon Deep Sea Diva and then go into Deep Sea Sentry. And then we're going to overlay for a Gigantic Spright. Again, just going into the Spright line as our backup. Although I will say something here, and I just noticed this. And this is a line that I need to look for more often in testing. So if you have 2 level 2 monsters and a Bystial like that, you actually don't necessarily have to commit to a Spright line. You can still summon Chaos Ruler. What I could have done there was link the Diva and the Sentry into Sprind. Sprind send Shinobi Necro to the graveyard. Bystial Saronir would then banish the Shinobi Necro and summon itself. Then I could special the Shinobi Necro and then sync for 8 for Chaos Ruler. Now, that is a little risky, and it's very hand and situationally dependent on when or if you would want to do that. In this case, I would want to, because I actually do have the Nemeses Corridor in my hand, so I could use that to summon a Thunder Dragon Colossus, because I would, of course, banish the Shinobi Necro with Saronir, and then Shinobi Necro would banish itself. But here, I opted to go for a Spright line, admittedly mostly because I wasn't considering the possibility of going into Sprind. The Spright line is the safer play, though. The Chaos Ruler line in that case is more if you want to get it twisted, to borrow tier limit terms, but nah, we decided to just go ahead and play it a little bit safe there. So like I said, you know, even though we got disrupted, we can still just set up a Spright board and then we are good to go. Now, one cool thing about this deck too is that you can actually play as much or as little into the Spright deck itself. Like, I've seen variants of this deck. Lithium 2300, who I'm actually a huge fan of, by the way, actually has a deck profile for this deck as well. But his profile is definitely more skewing towards a more traditional Spright deck that's just kind of using Assault Synchrons and has the potential to sometimes combo off with Synchro plays. This variation that I have is definitely focused on comboing off with Synchro plays. It just so happens that, again, sometimes we just do a Spright line instead. So here I'm just going to rock the Saronir. I'm going to try to bring back a Diva to go for an 8 with this Spright Elf. My opponent's got a Super Poly. Definitely a little bit annoying, that's for sure. I thought a Garura was coming, but it's actually going to be Star Venom, which is also annoying, but definitely manageable. I'm going to, of course, let the Star Venom effect add attack points resolve. I've got the Spright Red effect if I need to negate and destroy Star Venom's other effect. Now here I'm going to use the Nemeses Corridor to get out the Colossus, but I'm not going to just sit on it. I'm actually going to use it as a material here. Oh, maybe not. I thought I did. Sorry. I think I'm getting my games mixed up again. No, that's right. Because we have the other Bystial monster, I can just go ahead and get out the Chaos Ruler. That will also trigger the Druiswarm effect, and that's how we're going to send the Star Venom. And actually, sending doesn't destroy it, so that actually doesn't trigger the effect to destroy all our cards. But even if it did, which I thought it did, even if it had, we could have used Red, send Elf, and then we should have still had enough damage on board for lethal. But yeah, our opponent's just going to concede here, as in this case, we absolutely have enough damage on board for lethal. Got one more duel to show off. Let's go straight into it here. And for our last duel, we are up against Bystial Zodiac, which I was a little surprised to see. But to be fair, the Bystials do slot in very nicely as disruption. Extenders, they can be used as well, but it doesn't seem like it's quite as good. But in any case, so I'm gonna start by activating Tuning here to grab myself an Assault Synchron. This hand is looking phenomenal, except for the fact that we just milled Deep Sea Sentry. That actually sucks, but because we have 2 Spright monsters in our hand, it actually doesn't matter. We can just go into the Cupid Pitch line anyway. But that is one thing to note. To be fair, I don't think it's something that I should have necessarily played around, because the odds of that actually happening are fairly low, milling the 1 of Deep Sea Sentry off of the 1 mil on Tuning. But you know, I guess it might have been optimal to just go ahead and do the rest of the Diva before I did the Tuning there, because I don't need Assault Synchron until pretty soon here. Alright, so like I mentioned, we have a level 2 tuner and Chaos Ruler, but we're not tuning them. We're just going to go for the Sprind Fs and the Shinobi Necro. Chaos Ruler F, banish the Cupid Pitch and the Shinobi Necro to summon itself. Or so I think, but my opponent actually has a Bystial Baldrake lying in wait, so that's definitely rough. That means no Chaos Ruler, no Assault Synchron effect either because it's not in our graveyard yet, but we can at the very least put the Chaos Ruler back into our extra deck with the Nemeses Corridor and then get out a Thunder Dragon Colossus. This is the game. This is the game I was thinking of earlier where I actually don't keep it on the field. I'm just going to use it as a Synchro material in order to summon Baronne de Fluer. One of the main reasons I decided to do that here was to blow up this Baldrake, but also I think the Omni Negate is generally a little more useful than not being able to search, so. Alright, opponent's going to summon a Saronir. I'm actually not going to negate and destroy it with Baron, because I don't think this Saronir is particularly threatening. It looks like they're going to try to Desire his main phase 2, but I've got an Ash Blossom. So I'm definitely holding on to my Baron's Omni Negate, and definitely going to wait for a more opportune moment. Alright, looks like they're setting a card and then passing back over to us. So draw for turn, we have another Assault Synchron. Not a fantastic draw, but I guess there probably could have been worse. I'm just going to normal summon the Assault Synchron and move to battle phase. Of course, blowing up the opponent's back row with Baron before doing so. I'll battle over the Saronir and then attack directly with Assault Synchron, and we'll pass back over to our opponent here. Alright, here's a Fire Formation Tenki. I actually ended up letting this resolve. The reason I let it resolve is because for some reason I thought my opponent was, well, I guess this is a relatively fair assumption. I was thinking that I had an opponent who was on Tri-Brigade Branded. Like, I expected a Fractal to get added here. And in that case, I would definitely wait for the Fractal and not want to negate and destroy the Tenki in case they already had a Fractal. But in this situation, against Zodiacs, I definitely don't want this Thoroughblade to get added. Especially because my opponent doesn't actually activate any effects until there's Zeus here, which means they are going to get to clear these monsters off my board. So it really just came down to, had I negated and destroyed Tenki, I would have just been in an easier spot. We're still, I think, in a fine spot. It's going to very much depend on what we top deck, to be fair, but at the very least, this Zeus is going to get negated and destroyed, so it's only got the one field wipe in it. And as far as a card advantage after this goes, the opponent and I are sitting relatively equal, although I think I do have a little bit higher potential to top deck plays than they do at this point in time. Alright, there goes the Zeus, and now it's our turn once again. Going to grab a Saronir off the top of our deck here. Beautiful. Goes very well with our Assault Synchron. We can even banish Lubellion out of our opponent's yard. Going to drop down this Assault Synchron, and because we put the Chaos Ruler back in our extra deck with the Nemesis Corridor, we get to just summon that here and excavate for 5, as well as activate the Saronir's effect to send a Lubellion as well. So that should already be good enough for lethal pretty much right there. Oh, and then we find a Spright Blue as well. So yeah, between using Lubellion to sack Chaos Ruler and summoning itself, which we're going to do now, Chaos Ruler bringing itself back, and then we could just even normal summon Spright Blue, and then just go from there. Oh, we're going to use Assault Synchron to bring back Chaos Ruler in this case. That's fine as well. But yeah, opponent's just going to go ahead and give us the win, as it was fairly inevitable by this point anyway. So that's going to go ahead and do it for duels. None of these games actually did a very concrete combo line, or like an uninterrupted one, I guess. So I would like to show that off here in the future on the channel as well. I do have a game on my Patreon right now where I show off a very, very exceptional hand with this deck and just combo off completely with it. So if you're on the Patreon, feel free to go check that out. And if you're not, feel free to go ahead and subscribe. Just $5 a month, which is a spiel you'll hear in our outro here in just a moment, where you'll also see our patrons credited. So without further ado, here is that outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack, you'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot, as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now, so without further ado, this is Accel. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.